You're watching NTC News, DeKalb County's only television news source, on the campus of Northern Illinois University and from the Northern Television Center. This is NTC News Tonight.
The violence in the Middle East is broadening. Good evening, I'm Fiorella Cole, and thanks for joining us.
And I'm Mike Lewis. Experts here at NIU are watching closely as the fighting between Arabs and Israelis escalates in an area known as the Gaza Strip. The rockets are still flying over Israel and the bombs are still dropping on the Palestinian Gaza Strip. The 6-day-old fighting has killed about 100 Palestinians and 3 Israelis, and Israel is threatening to escalate the attacks if a solution isn't reached. Israel wants the ruling militant group Hamas to stop its rocket fire. Hamas wants Israel to lift the blockade of Gaza. Both say they're open to a diplomatic solution, but one NIU professor says this is just the latest cycle of violence.
The current cycle of violence started very recently with the assassination of a man named Ahmad Jabari. Ahmad Jabari was the second in command of Hamas, an organization that is fighting for Palestinian statehood that is considered both a terrorist group here in the United States and in Israel.
Now we'll be talking more with Professor Brathwaite about the Gaza crisis in a couple of minutes, but now let's turn over from the Middle East to Asia. President Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are now on the last leg of their 3-day tour of Asia. They arrived in Cambodia to attend the East Asia Summit. On Sunday, they kicked off their trip with a stop in Thailand, and now, today, they're heading to Myanmar, making Mr. Obama the first sitting U.S. president to visit the country. The once reclusive country was under the control of the military, but recently began taking steps towards democracy. Here at NIU Center of Southeast Asia Studies, one professor says Burma plays a central role in stabilizing the region.
I can't believe that it will ever be a formal ally of the United States. All I can say is that I think it could be an important and perhaps ultimately a stabilizing force in Southeast Asia, which would be of benefit to the United States and to that part of the world as well. Because Burma's always been kind of at least more recently, has been kind of a pariah state, and I think many Southeast Asians are kind of embarrassed by Burma. So with these changes coming along, I think it will be a much better place.
The trial for the man accused of murdering an NIU student 2 years ago is being pushed back. William Curl was supposed to stand trial next month, but his attorney says Curl can't hear, so they need time to get him hearing aids. The new trial date is January 14th. Curl is facing multiple charges, including murder, arson, and criminal sexual assault.
3 juveniles have been charged with criminal damage and trespassing of the abandoned Cortland Elementary School. Now, 2 months ago, several juveniles broke into Cortland Elementary. They put holes into the walls and broke windows.
A deadly plane crash leaves 2 people dead in Wisconsin.
And the former Chicago cop convicted of killing 2 people while driving drunk is sent to prison. These are today's state lines.
Federal investigators are working to figure out what caused a fatal plane crash yesterday in southeastern Wisconsin. 2 people died when the single-engine plane registered to a man in Antioch, Illinois, crashed into a cornfield.
A former Chicago police detective has been sentenced to 8 years in prison for a drunken driving crash that killed 2 people. Joseph Regali's blood alcohol content was more than 3 times the legal limit when he slammed his SUV into a car that had stalled on an expressway entrance ramp in 2009.
A published report says 13 members of Cook County Assessor Joe Barrios' family work for the county or other government agencies. The Chicago Sun-Times reports 2 other family members have retired. An ethics board has called onto him to fire family members on his staff, but Barrios says he's being picked on.
Chicago authorities have arrested a 20-year-old man they say robbed several people who were responding to ads posted on Craigslist. Andrew Jones of Chicago was arrested Friday and charged with aggravated battery and armed robbery. Police say people responding to the ads would arrange to meet Jones at a specified location. And those are today's state lines.
Protesters marched the streets of Ireland.
And the security line at the airport is only going to get longer. Here's what's happening in today's World Watch.
Marchers were in the streets of Dublin, Ireland over the weekend to protest the Catholic country's abortion laws. It follows the death of an Indian woman after doctors refused to terminate her pregnancy. The woman was 17 weeks pregnant.
One of the busiest travel weeks of the year is getting underway. And now this is what the security line at Georgia Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston looked like this morning. At one point, it was an hour and a half long. Crowds are only expected to get bigger. One industry trade group predicts as many as 24 million people will travel by plane this week alone.
Walmart is fighting back against a planned walkout by workers on one of the busiest shopping days of the year. The Food and Commercial Workers Union is calling for employees to skip work or walk off the job on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Walmart says the striking workers represent a very small group and the company is ready for the Friday shopping blitz.
Donations for the victims of Superstorm Sandy are still pouring in at the American Red Cross. The relief agency has raised $145 million in donations. The Red Cross is using the money it receives to operate shelters and offer food, water, and other relief supplies to storm victims. It has delivered more than 6 million meals and snacks and more than 2 million relief kits. And that's today's World Watch.
I just love the weather we've been having lately.
Oh, I second that. Eddie Wildermuth is here. And Eddie, what's the weather looking like for Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving is going to be like the warmest day of the week. As we go on throughout the week, the temperature is going to warm up as we go on. Let's take a look at that outlook for tomorrow as we'll have mostly sunny skies throughout the area. Peoria 62 degrees, Rockford at 54, and Chicago at 52. Stay with us and I'll tell you how soon that cold weather will return. This is NTC News Tonight.
It's time to join forces, get energized, and fuel up right. Because starting today, every kid in America has a mission. Bring out the action hero in you. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
It was an absolutely beautiful day today in DeKalb as we saw temperatures well above average. We actually got up to 57 degrees for our high today. Our low was even 11 degrees above normal as we were only down to 39 overnight. So we look at the radar, you can see we do have some rain off to our west. This will kind of creep into our area. It's associated with a cold front that's kind of just chilling at the Mississippi River. And it's going to stay there as we go into today tomorrow as we have this area of high pressure that's just kind of holding it at bay. And eventually it's going to push it back off to the west and bring some warmer air with it. So tonight, look for that chance of rain with a low of 45 overnight. Tomorrow we will feel a little bit of an effect from that cold front as it won't allow us to get as warm as we were today. Temperatures up only to 53 degrees, partly sunny skies. Tomorrow night, look for a low right around 37 and look for some fog as we go on throughout the night into Wednesday morning. So we go on through the week, we're going to see warmer temperatures, 58 on Wednesday and then 62 on Thanksgiving. So go out and enjoy this warmer weather while it lasts because it's not going to be here for much longer. Because as we move on through the week, we'll have another system come in, going to cool us off down to 47 on Friday and then 38 on Saturday. That'll do it for the weather. Let's send it back to Fiorella and Mike at the news desk.
Thanks, Eddie. As we said earlier, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has turned to even worse violence. And NIU political science professor Robert Brathwaite is here. Is it safe to say that every professor in your position watches the Gaza conflict closely?
Most definitely. I think anyone who studies international relations right now will be watching these events in the Middle East very, very closely. And I think it's more important not just to those of us who study international relations, but I think there's some specific effects that we would feel here in the country itself. So those who are well read on the policy and events in the Middle East would probably take interest as well.
Now, at the moment, the big question is whether there can be a ceasefire between the ground troops, and it's pretty clear that the Palestinians and Israelis aren't doing it themselves. So who can we turn to for mediation?
So as of right now, it seems like the prime mediator in this context is Egypt. And this is, I mean, I think that two things should be noted from this. One is this is a bit of a change where usually the prime mediator is the United States. However, we have an Arab country taking the lead. Also, I think that what should be noticed from this is Egypt's first kind of diplomatic foray after they had changed regimes. So I think there's some serious repercussions for the Israeli-Egyptian relationship depending on how this mediation goes.
And do you see a ground war happening? And if so, how likely is it?
Well, I think that question should be answered in two ways. One, in the sense, is what are the likelihood of an Israeli ground invasion? And for a lot of the rhetoric we're seeing right now, it seems that as of right now, the betting money would say likely. Mostly from the standpoint, if we look at historical precedents. The Israelis did launch a ground invasion in the Lebanon War only a few years ago, so this is not out of the ballpark for the types of military options they consider on the table. When we talk about it from the standpoint of do we see the United States becoming involved in a ground war, and I think that's a bit of a more nuanced answer. I think it's unlikely we'll see United States combat troops being deployed to Gaza or within Israel. However, could this draw on U.S. combat troops in other regions of the world? Still to be seen, but the chances are that it could.
Now, what does that mean to stability in that region?
So I think from the standpoint of stability, right, what we should be looking at is this should not just be looked at as a conflict from the standpoint of it's just the Israelis and the Palestinians, or from a very domestic standpoint. But this is now drawing in a lot of regional players, and a lot of regional events are starting to impact this as well. So we're seeing how this can affect countries like Egypt, Jordan. We also see how certain events going on in the Middle East are also playing a role in this context. The Arab Spring, the Syrian uprising, even Iranian proliferation can be affected by this event. So from the standpoint of stability, we should see the cycle of violence that's going on right now can have a serious repercussion for wider stability in the broader region as a whole.
So what's the real lesson here? Why should your students be following this?
Well, I think for two reasons, right? One is we know the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. This has been a conflict that has been ongoing since the 40s, since the creation of Israel in 1948. So from that standpoint, for an historical precedent, to understand that why the history behind a serious issue that affects U.S. national security policy, understanding that this is a serious conflict that impacts the international system as a whole. The second thing I'd want them to take from this, the big lesson to be learned, is something I just briefly referred to, this idea that to view this as not just the same old fight between the Israelis and the Palestinians, but now we have this wider ramifications for the region given some of the events we've seen going on, given the instability in Syria, given the ongoing tensions with the United States and Iran. What I'd like them to take from this is this understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict plays a role in all these types of events that seem not to be related.
All right, well, Dr. Brathwaite, this is such a volatile situation and an important issue for all of us. So thank you so much for being here with us today. And we hope you can stay with us and keep us up to date as to the story and how it develops.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, they were. It's time for NTC Sports, and Paul Forfecki joins us. And Paul, now we had baseball, volleyball, even wrestling over the weekend. Where to even start?
It's tough, you know, like you said, it was a really busy weekend, but we got to start somewhere, so I'm thinking maybe some men's basketball. All right, now the men's team has gotten off to a rough start, losing its first 2 games on the road, but they had a chance to change their luck when they returned home Sunday to take on the Judson Eagles. The Huskies got off to a slow start in this game. Luke Pearson hits the 3 here, and Judson takes the early 17-10 lead. They hit 5 threes in the first 5 minutes, but Axel Bolin with the big dunk here, attacking the rim like it said something about his mama. Kevin Gray wants to join the dunk party with a huge dunk here, increasing the Huskies' lead. Hey, Akeem Springs, he's not much of a dunker. He's more of a shooter. Pops the 3, but hey, Judson not out of it yet. We got Groutman hitting the buzzer beater, and NIU up 39-32. But here's a dagger. Steps back, hits the 2. NIU gets its first win of the season, defeating Judson 72-54. Now on to wrestling, a sport not too much talked about around campus, but that might change after wrestling started 3-0 and looked to keep its hot streak going last Saturday at its tournament. The Huskies crushed Calumet College of St. Joseph's 57-0 after, oddly enough, all but one of the Crimson Waves wrestlers were DQ'd due to a failed skin test. Very strange. Next, the Huskies faced a full team of the Lores Dewhawks. Didn't matter, the Huskies still shut them out 41-0. And finally, NIU took on number 23 Purdue. Very tough matchup, and the Huskies would fall to a tough team 37-0. Despite the loss, NIU still improves to 5-1 in the season. Their next match will be December 1st at the Kaufman Brand Open. Now on to NIU volleyball. They're looking to keep their season going as they started the MAC tournament as the 4th seed. In the quarterfinals, Huskies took on Akron, and after dropping the first set, NIU went on to take 3 straight sets against the Zips. Mackenzie Roddy led the team with 15 kills, and Mary Kirsch had 12 kills as the Husky advanced to the semifinals. Next, NIU would take on number 1 seed Ohio Bobcats, and look at this upset. NIU lost the first 2 sets, but rattled off 3 straight wins to upset the Bobcats. Megan Romo had 18 kills, Alexis Gonzalez had 58 assists, and the Huskies move on to the 3rd straight championship game. Finally, NIU took on the 2nd seed Bowling Green Falcons, and the script was flipped on the Huskies, who had won the first 2 sets, but then Bowling Green cranked off 3 straight wins to win the MAC championship. Very disappointing end for the Huskies, but they did have 2 all-tournament selections in Megan Romo and Mary Kurish. Sports notes today, NIU football finally getting some recognition in the polls. The Huskies were voted 24th in the AP poll and 23rd in the coaches poll. Still not in the top 25 in the BCS standings, which is the one that counts. But the Huskies will try to change that Friday when they head to Michigan for their last game before the MAC championship. Speaking of that championship, the Huskies now have an opponent for that game in the Kent State Golden Flashes. They clinched the MAC East after defeating Bowling Green 31-24 on Saturday. More college football, the University of Maryland and Rutgers University are heading over to the Big Ten Conference. And finally, women's basketball won 2 games over the weekend, improving their record to 2-1 overall. And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Play of the Day. We head to Kansas City for some NFL action. The Chiefs took on the Cincinnati Bengals, and the red-headed wonder Andy Dalton finds his favorite target, A.J. Green, with a spectacular catch in the end zone. Let's take another look. A.J. Green, one-handed defender in his face. Huge play, great grab. Bengals go on to win this one, and that catch was a big part of it. And one more thing, guys. Tonight, big Monday Night Football game. Chicago Bears travel to San Francisco, take on those 49ers, both teams at the top of their division. So it's a really important game for the teams battling for home field advantage, so should be great.
Thanks, Paul. Coming up, find out how this student is turning physics into a fun project.
Turning a 20-foot wall into a canvas takes vision. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
In Illinois, visit knowhowtogoillinois.org.
Here in Illinois, we ride bikes made from steel or other types of metal, while down in Georgia, wood bikes may be the new thing. While during his physics homework, 15-year-old Colin Graver of Georgia decided to make himself a wooden bike. Now, this bike is made of a single sheet of polywood, which cost him only $20. It's 65 pounds and only goes 6 miles an hour. Colin is now working on his next bike for a higher quality wood to make it go faster.
This could be the next popular item on every kid's Christmas list.
I mean, it has potential to be. I'll wait for wooden bike too.
Enjoy the rest of your evening. This is our only newscast of the week. We'll be back next week, the same time.
Have a delicious Thanksgiving. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye, everyone.